SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. Bulldogs sit atop the ladder. You must be happy.
Pretty happy. Those injuries to Matt Burton and Viliame Kikau are a bit of a headache, but thankfully it looks like Matt Burton's only going to be missing for 2 weeks, and that's according to Willie Mason on Channel 7. Willie Mason's a hard-hitting reporter these days, gets better scoops than journalists themselves. Well done to Willie Mason there. But, thankfully Burton's only going to be out for a couple of weeks. Kikau will be out for longer. Obviously they're going to miss Kikau, the offloads, the potency and attack. But I think Burton was going to be a much bigger headache, a much harder player to cover, just with his kicking game and his goal kicking, his organisation of the team. He was going to be much harder to cover. I think, back rowers like Kikau, while of course he's a destructive back rower, a very potent attacking weapon, as I said, I think they'll find it much easier to cover him with some depth in the forward pack than it would have been to cover Burton if he had been out for a while. But thankfully, as I say, Burton's only going to be missing for a couple of weeks, according to hard-hitting journalist Willie Mason.
They got the bye this round anyway, against the Eels.
I was going to say it's actually your Dragons with the bye, but now I get what you mean. They are playing the Eels.
Yeah, they got the bye this round against
and I guess
the Eels,
if you are going to be missing 2 of your key players, Parramatta are probably the team that you'd want to be coming up against, I would have thought.
Then they
will come back hard this week.
They got the Sharks and then the Knights, and then they have the actual bye. So the Sharks game missing one of their key halves and their key forwards might be a bit difficult because the Sharks are riding high as well. What is it there? One lost one, but unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean they lost to Penrith in the first game in Vegas.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah.
And then they hit back.
They dominated North Queensland.
Hit back against the Cowboys. Yeah, so.
But the Bulldogs fans are having a party in Belmore every single time they win. Like, it's going a bit over the top.
Yeah, I mean that. To be fair, that is their only game. But
they had a party last week as well.
Yeah.
I was making fun of the Tigers fans for going a bit over the top because I saw people on social media and stuff, fans going, "Yeah, top 8 bound, baby!" after that win for the Tigers, and I was like, guys. Bit much there. Second round. But the Bulldogs are literally having a party after every win in the streets of Belmore.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny how, it's been good to have these games at the suburban grounds. You mentioned the Dragons and the Bulldogs played at Jubilee in round 1. Ooh. And then the Bulldogs played the Titans at Belmore on Sunday night in that stifling heat. I think it was 38 degrees, just insane heat. We're in the middle of March and it's 38 degrees. But I've got to say, the more you think about it, you go, if you're a fan, it's just so that those suburban grounds, like you can't get a seat a lot of the time. You're standing up on the hill. You can't go to it's hard to go to the toilet. It's hard to get a beer or get something to eat. And so you just sort of feel for the fan. I know everyone knocks Homebush, the Olympic Stadium, but at least when you go there, you got plenty of space. You're more comfortable. You know what I mean? Like everyone says, the suburban grounds are so romantic and everything, and it's great for the game, and it is, but, gee, it's a difficult experience for the spectators.
Suburban grounds look better on TV because they're smaller.
Yeah.
That's all it really is. I think people are they've got a little bit of a misconception, right? Because when you go to Homebush and there's even 30,000 people there, it's 30,000 people and you could actually have nobody sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
And you talk about there's 700 bars to service 80,000 people, so there's no lines at the bars or the food. there's plenty of toilets for 80,000 people. So, but then when you go to the suburban grounds, it's sell out with that 30,000. It looks way better, and I think people kind of confuse the romanticism of the suburban grounds with the actual reality of it. It's just a packed football stadium or a packed sporting stadium looks better.
Yeah.
While you're at the game.
Yeah.
And while you're on television, and so they romanticize those Belmore and Cogra and stuff like that because like, oh, look how amazing this atmosphere is. Yeah. But you know what? The best atmosphere I've ever seen is at Homebush. Yeah. It's full.
Yeah.
You know, like grand finals, state of origins, Matildas games. Because it's the same feeling, actually. A full stadium is actually what they're romanticising. And unfortunately for Rugby League, they can't get full stadiums at those big grounds. Like the Sydney football, what's it called?
Allianz.
Yeah, Allianz. Is it Allianz now?
Yeah.
Stadium, something.
Yeah, so the newly redeveloped Allianz Stadium.
I've been at that when it's fully packed out, and it's just the same as when I'm at a, fully packed out Belmore. Except, you know what? At Allianz, it's better because it's more comfortable.
Yeah.
Better food, more toilets.
Yeah, that's...
but yeah, so I think it's just really that. Like, people love those suburban grounds because when you go there, it's packed out and the roar of the crowd, it's more better. But when I liken the Homebush Stadium to like an empty room. You know, you first move into a house and the room is empty and you speak and everything is like echoey and dead.
Yeah.
That's what Homebush is like all the time, unless it's full.
Yeah.
And then you get that atmosphere of the roar of the crowd. And so, yeah, those suburban grounds, man, I hate going to Belmore. That's the worst.
And that's the thing, like, that was their only game at Belmore this season. And maybe that's the way to play it with the suburban grounds. Just have 1 or 2 games there a year, because then it becomes a real event, the game. Yeah. If they played every game at Belmore, well, then you'd take that novelty aspect away, because it'd just be, every game's on there. So the fact that there's so few games on there really adds to that sense of an event.
There's no chance you get a sellout crowd every week at Belmore because of the difficulty in parking, going to the toilet, everything.
No.
Getting there, everything.
That they got a huge crowd against the Titans because it was the only game at Belmore this year. If they played every game at Belmore, how many would they have got to a game against the Titans? So many people would be like, I don't want to go, man. I went 2 weeks ago. I don't want to go. Nah. It's hard to go. Even it's like, only a 10-minute walk from Belmore Stadium, but it's a 10-minute walk from Belmore Stadium. Yeah.
It's Belmore Station, it's so far. Then the parking, you can't park. Luckily, I used to live on the corner of Sharp Street, so I could just walk there when I lived there. So I've constantly for the past 2 years talked about how I hate suburban grounds, and I almost after my one experience at Cogra last year, I swore I'd never go to another rugby league game. That's how much I hate them. But yeah, it's romanticized, and you notice the AFL doesn't really go on and on about it because they get those big crowds in those big stadiums. And I think that's more really what it's about. It's just the size of the crowds. You go to Homebush when it's empty for a regular season game, and it sucks to be there, man. It's way better to get there. The food and drinks are way easier to get. They're still bloody expensive. Way better to go to the bathroom. Easier to get home. But the atmosphere sucks because, we have 40,000 people there and we all don't have to sit next to each other. I got to say, and I hate to say it because I love Belmore, obviously, but, we've had 2 players go down with knee injuries there on Sunday night, Matt Burton and Viliame Kikau. Is there something up with the surface there, maybe? 2 players going down with knee injuries. As I said, it's the only game they're playing there this season. It just seems to me that, I didn't watch. What were they?
Again, 2 players going down with these knee injuries, so...
What were they?
I don't know, could it have been something with the surface?
Were they step-based, what's it called, gunshot injuries, or in tackles?
I think they were more, to be fair, sort of these impact injuries, like impact in the tackle injuries. But, the surface could still have had something to do with that.
Yeah,
I mean, if they're getting... If they're getting their legs stuck in the surface, well, they're more susceptible to I guess, suffering that impact injury, aren't they? As opposed to another surface where... if there was a freer surface, maybe. Again, I'm just speculating. You just think 2 players going down in the same game. at a ground where they don't usually play. Games are rarely played there. So maybe that's something to have a look at. Again, they got plenty of time to look at it because they're not going to be playing
that's next year.
There again next year, although they do train there. So, I'm not sure.
You'd think they'd be used to it because they train there. You know?
Yeah. It was just a theory I was thinking about.
Those knee injuries, when they're those gunshot ones, like the person steps and...
Yeah, it wasn't...
Then you know it's 100% surface.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was more other players' impact on them
but then
the tackle.
when it's an impact-based one, there's still always the conjecture, especially if it happens multiple times.
Yeah,
because you've got to remember the impact is deadened by movement. So if they've been hit and their foot wasn't able to slide as it is because of the surface, that's what causes the injury. That's
right. It's like, people could go, oh yeah, but it was the impact in the tackle. And it's like, yeah, but maybe the surface, allowed the players to be stationary and made them more susceptible to that impact injury. So,
yeah, vast majority of knee injuries that happen, I don't know 100% about rugby league, but in jiu-jitsu is just because a person isn't able to move their knee.
Yeah.
Like that, and it's normally because someone else is holding on to the knee.
Yeah.
Not because of the surface of the mats, the ground, but it's because their knee is in an awkward position. The other person moves, and because you can't move your knee explodes.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's how breaking pressure works. When I'm doing a heel hook, I'm making your knee go one direction and your heel go the other. So you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that's what I mean. So when are they multiple gunshot type knee injuries in a single match? You know it's a surface. Or like there was the one a few weeks ago. I can't remember. It was in the I think in the Charity Shield, wherever the Charity Shield was played. One of the games in the trials, but everyone slipped over. It might have been a Broncos one, I don't know. Everyone slipped over, and that's a surface issue. But then, when it's impact-based, it's the thing about it is like 50-50. It could be surface. And so that's why they should look and see, like, is it the surface? Because if it is, then they shouldn't play there.
Yeah, as I say, Matt Burton, thankfully, only 2 weeks out now.
Grade 2, apparently.
Kikau will be longer, but as I say, I think Kikau, of the two players, Kikau is certainly easier to cover than Burton. But as I said, Burton with that organisation, the long kicking game, the bombs and the goal kicking as well. He's just so much of what they do is based around Burton, and it'd be so much harder to cover him. Whereas Kikau, there's a lot of back rowers on their roster, a lot of depth in that position. So of the two, certainly Kikau's easier to cover, even though he will be a big loss. They
re-signed Kurt Mann, so he can play in the back row.
Yeah, well, he can play anywhere.
Everyone can at the Bulldogs can play in the back row. Like out of the 17 players, probably 16 of them can play in the back row, so it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. Meanwhile, that was a good win though. But this week's tips were all over the shop. Just ridiculous.
Some of those results. That was an extraordinary win by the Roosters.
Yeah, I was talking to
Panthers.
PC about it yesterday. Like, that's that monkey off their back. They can either take it as that, and then that was, we talked about it last year, year before with the AFL, with the Brisbane Lions couldn't win at the MCG, so therefore can't win a premiership. So they wanted to play more games at the MCG. They finally got the monkey off their back and won a premiership. Yeah. Right? So it's the same as, the Dragons couldn't beat the Raiders for 10 years or something, and I think it was like 17 in Canberra, and then finally when Wayne Bennett played Ricky Stewart, they broke that. Now that whole thing's gone. Rabbitohs didn't beat Roosters for like 11 years. They get that one, and it goes back to a normal thing. These streaks don't normally restart. So now that the Roosters have broken that streak, you'd think... next couple of years they could possibly actually win the premiership now.
Yeah, and they were huge. I won't say the odds. I don't want us to get in strife over that, but they were massive outsiders. The Roosters going into that game, huge outsiders. And so maybe you thought, and gee, it was a cracking finish to that game as well. The Panthers almost very nearly levelled it up at the end there, nearly scored that try in the corner at the end.
Yeah, I wasn't watching, but it was really funny because everyone was in my chat was saying like, oh my god, they're letting the Panthers back into the game. The referees are putting the Panthers in the game. Strangely though, A lot of people actually tipped the Roosters, which was weird to me. Yeah, like flukesters.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought they should have been outsiders going into it, but then when you think about it a bit more, you sort of go, they should have been outsiders, but maybe not to the degree that they were. I mean, given that, it's only round 2. It's too early to say definitively how certain teams are going to go this year. You have to wait. You probably got to wait till, I reckon maybe after about round 10, you've got a good idea of where teams are going to sit, because you've got enough of a cross-section where you played against enough teams to have a good idea of where teams are going to land. But it's so early in the season, you're not 100% sure yet. And obviously the Panthers were coming off that Vegas trip. So you sort of think, was there a little bit of Vegas hangover there from the Panthers? So I think that was potentially a factor as well.
I remember last year all of the teams that went to Vegas came back a bit iffy. And it's different this year. Last year they got all of the teams that went to Vegas to play each other in the first few rounds. And this year they're just like thrown to the wolves, man. So it's a little bit unfair, probably.
Yeah, and again, this is a team so they've won 4 straight premierships and they're coming off a trip to Vegas. If you're ever going to have a bit of a hangover, I think it's under those circumstances.
Yeah. But anyway, Des Hasler, the Titans. I keep thinking Des Hasler still coaches the Seagulls. Titans coach Des Hasler has had a bit of a whine about the scheduling for his team. And Billy Slater's had something to say about it. Fair enough. I think Des Hasler's scheduling is actually not so bad, to be honest. Yeah,
he's going on about, Hasler said, and I quote, there has probably been 17 games of footy played before we get to play one, because they had the bye in the first round and then they played the last game of round 2. He's actually wrong there. It's the 16th game. It's not 17. It's the last game of the second round, so it's the 16th game. I don't know what Des Hasler is going on about, to be honest, because, I mean, why does it matter that they played the last game of round 2? They're still playing against a team who have only played one game. What does it matter if the Titans had played on Sunday evening or Saturday night or Friday night? They're still coming up, they played against the Bulldogs, they're still coming up against a team that's only played one game. So why does it matter how many times other teams have played before they take the field? So that was sort of a strange comment to me. Obviously deflecting from the performance of his team.
I like his deflections. They're always so weird. It's not like a Ricky Stewart deflection where it will be like, because the refs are out to get us, or else we don't get Friday night games, or we haven't spent enough for the salary cap, or whatever the Ricky Stewart things are. There's Hasler's like, we've had 17 games before ours.
What? It's
okay.
It's just mysterious because... Isn't it? It's all about. It's about their opponents who they've only played one game. So, well, it's not like the Bulldogs had played 3 games before the Titans had played one. The Bulldogs had only played one game, and all right, the Titans had the bye in the first round. All right, well, somebody's got to have the bye, and you know what? It's not an accident that the Titans are given the bye in round 1, right? They would never give a big club like the Bulldogs or Souths or Parramatta or your Dragons or the Broncos. They would never have the bye in round 1. You know why? Because the NRL aren't going to make fans sit through a long, hot summer and then come back in round 1 and have a big power club sitting on the sideline in round 1. Clearly, it's deliberate from the NRL. They've gone through and gone, well, who's the team that the least people care about? And they've come up with the Titans, obviously. And they've gone, well, all right, we'll give them the bye because, no one's going to care about that. Notice how the big power clubs never have the bye in round 1.
Tigers last year was round 1. Because nobody cares about the Tigers.
That's the thing. They're not a. You wouldn't call them a power club. The big clubs with huge supporter bases, the popular clubs, are never given the bye in round 1. Somebody has to have the bye in round 1, and it's the Titans because they're not a big club. They're not a high profile club.
I don't see how having the bye actually has any effect anyway. You had the finals, the trials. Everyone has byes. Who's on the bye this week? Thank God it's the Dragons. Maybe they can get 2 points. Maybe, we'll see. And also the Bulldogs have the bye this week. It's a weird deflection, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's what it is, isn't it? It's just he doesn't want people to talk about his team. He'd prefer people to be talking about this than talking about the performance of his own team. Yeah. And as Billy Slater said, these are quotes from Billy Slater. He said on his podcast, he says, and I quote, "I get you had a bye in round one, but they are the cards you've been dealt. You've just got to get on with it and play. You can't whinge about it. The more you talk about it, the more it becomes an issue and a distraction for your team. At the end of the day, they didn't start the game overly well. They were on the back foot from the start, and the Bulldogs were up and about," end quote. So you can't argue with Billy Slater there. He's 100% right. Des Hasler's just got to deal with it and get on with it and not blame the scheduling for his team getting off to a poor start here.
In the end, all the team stats were pretty even, you know. Like, but it does kind of tend to even out. Like, aside from 52% possession to the Bulldogs, 75 to 76% completion rate. It's all about this post-contact meters. The Bulldogs are just, for a small, inexperienced forward pack, when they hit the line, they just keep going.
Yeah.
Titans had more tackle breaks, 32 to 31.
Yeah.
Around the same amount of tackles made, same amount of tackles missed. Bulldogs had more ineffective tackles, same amount of errors around, same amount of penalties. So it's not like Des Hasler's going to come out and blame his team for playing worse, even though they had an equal share of the ball and the same amount of errors and everything like that. So he had to find something. And I like the way his mind works, where he can find something so weird.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, so it's clearly...
So weird.
Clearly you go, he's this was in the planning.
Yeah.
If we lose, I'm going to go with this in the press conference afterwards. But I just think the Bulldogs getting off to that start, leading 22-0 early, I think that really worked in their favour, especially in those conditions, in that sort of heat. Yeah. Remember, this is 38-degree heat. In the middle of March. So the Titans, I think, were always going to have trouble running down a lead of that size in the heat. Getting off to a good start was crucial in those conditions. Very difficult to leave yourselves that much to do later in the game when you know everybody on the field's going to be extremely fatigued under that stifling heat.
Yeah, well, nobody tipped the Titans, so nobody expected them to win. Maybe they'll come good. Is Kieran Foran back yet?
No, he's not yet. He's actually been, he's been on Fox a bit, doing a bit of media work at the moment for, and so he wasn't playing.
I know.
Yeah, they get him back, and it'll help their cause.
Apparently, he's going to be playing off the bench. He is like 308 years old.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I'm really surprised that he's still playing. Like, given the battering that his body has copped over so many years, I think he's doing extremely well to still be playing.
I saw a rumour doing the rounds that Daly Cherry-Evans wants to sign for another 2 years.
We will. He's on our rundown. We will get to him a bit later. But yeah, Kieran Foran's got a bicep injury, and according to NRL.com casualty ward, it's to be confirmed. There's no sort of set return, and I guess that's a bit of a worry when there's no set return, because it sort of means that he might be out for a while.
I saw an interview with him where he confirmed that if when he does come back, he'll be playing from the bench as a utility as well.
It's probably not a bad way to use him at this stage of his career.
Exactly. Over to the Dragons.
Yes.
The Dragons had a shocker. They were ahead. They let the Rabbitohs back into the game. Like, when I say they let them back into the game, they were giving up errors and ruck infringements just over and over and over again at the back end of that. And then the Rabbitohs kicked a ridiculous field goal that didn't look like it was on to win 25-24. But Shane Flanagan specifically singled out Lachlan Ilias because his game was so poor. That's your halfback, bro. That's your first choice halfback. You've got no other halves. So
that's the thing. And he was pressed by journalists on if Ilias is where he needs to be after his latest performance. Flanagan didn't hold back. He said, and I quote, "You were here, weren't you? You're smarter than that. You can make your own assessment," end quote. So very pointed quotes from Flanagan there. Why doesn't Shane Flanagan take some responsibility? He just put it all on his players. I read extensive quotes from him. I didn't see any quotes from him in the reporting that I read of him taking any responsibility for this loss. He just put all the heat on his players, especially Lachlan Ilias. Why doesn't Shane Flanagan take some responsibility? He's had a whole pre-season to prepare these players, and they've come out and they're 0-2 to start the season. Why doesn't he take some accountability?
They didn't handle the heat as well as the Rabbitohs. That's what it was. The Dragons were up most of the game, and then last 15 minutes in that stifling heat, the Dragons just looked like dead out there. Rabbitohs also looked dead, but less dead.
and that's the thing. The Dragons had a 12-point lead as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was all right for the Rabbitohs managed to come back in that heat.
Yeah.
Why couldn't the Dragons... The Dragons had less to do at the end of the game. They had a 12-point lead. The Rabbitohs were able to come back.
Yeah, that was it. They just didn't handle the heat as well. So that's on coaching and conditioning, surely. That's what it is.
100%. And yet the coaching staff, or the coach, who's the only one of them who speaks publicly on a regular basis, has taken no responsibility for their poor start to the season.
Yeah.
And he's pinned it all on his players. There were more quotes from him. He says, well, you wouldn't want to be one of my players for the next 10 or 12 days, that's for sure, because they got the bye, of course. It's not going to be pretty, he said. Yeah. And quote, okay, so it's all the players' fault and he's not taking any responsibility.
They really needed someone on the field to step up and be a leader as well, and that just wasn't happening. I think even the senior players like Clint Gutherson just looked dead. Like he could not compete, couldn't talk. The halves were not communicating. But again, the Dragons looked way better when Jacob Little was on the field. I think that's still the main key thing for them. They need him on the field more and Damien Cook on the field less, or doing a different role, plain and simple. Dragons look better from dummy half with Little. They look better in defence with Little.
You watched the game, didn't you?
Yeah.
What did you think of Kyle Flanagan's game?
I thought he was just as bad as Lachlan Ilias.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? Because his dad's the coach, and so now we're in a situation where we go, well, is this the problem with a father coaching his son? Is he going to hold his son accountable?
He scored 2 tries, right? That was the thing. He scored 2 of the tries. But you can't...
Yeah, he did, but he did hint that he wasn't happy with his son's game, though. He says, once again, I won't go too deep into it, but the people who needed to make the decisions, I think we know he's referring to the halves, including his son, didn't make them all the right ones and didn't get us into field position, end quote. So that's the thing. He's clearly taking aim at his halves there. And I know, Flanagan scored a couple of tries. I
don't think it was any... That's the thing. When it came down to it, when the Rabbitohs got back into the game and got within 1 try, you wanted Gutherson, Flanagan, Ilias, Cook while he was on the field to step up and go, all right, guys, let's get him back, keep him out. But instead, all of them just became the walking dead. Every player... And it was so clearly heat fatigue because it was so damn hot.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But the Rabbitohs just handled it better. And that is solely a conditioning thing. That is solely off-season preparation, and so solely the responsibility of the coach.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Kyle Flanagan did score a couple of tries. He did, but he obviously the rest of his game can't have been too good when his dad, the coach, has I guess called him, not directly, but we know he's talking about the halves when he makes those quotes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the issue now. Is you go, well, if it gets to a point where Kyle Flanagan should be dropped from the team, is his dad going to make that decision?
I wouldn't.
But that's the thing. We may get to a point where that decision needs to be made, right?
Well, they actually can't drop him because you know why? They have no one else. They have no one else.
So they're stuck with him.
They're stuck. That's the 2 halves they have. That's it. They don't have anyone. Dropping either of them, they're both the best choice we have. And that's not... I'm not disparaging them. I'm a lot of clubs are in this situation with halves where what they have is the best they've got. And dropping either of them, the halves, and bringing up a young dude or whatever that is a nobody, it's not going to help.
But then you go, well, that's on Flanagan's recruitment then, isn't it? Why doesn't he have more options in the halves?
Well, there are no halves. I don't know. And then had a Mona leave 2 years ago.
At least have
going on. I don't know, man.
At least have someone in the lower grades who they could at least turn to when they're struggling in the halves. Someone. But that's the thing. I'm not saying that they need to bring Daly Cherry-Evans out of reserve grade. That's not going to happen. But you at least want somebody who can maybe do a job for you if it's not going well. They
have guys in the top 30 that can play halves, but none of them are going to be better than Flanagan or Ilias. Maybe Damien Cook can move to halfback and keep Little and Cook on the field at the same time, but I don't even know if he can play halfback. I used to play him in halfback sometimes in Rugby League video game, but just for the fun of it. They don't have anyone, and that's a lot of clubs are in the same boat. If one of their halves goes down, they're forced into a makeshift situation, just simply because there's not enough first grade level halves. Halfbacks or 5'8".
So this is the thing then. So Kyle Flanagan's at 5'8". So if there's a situation where a gun 5'8" becomes available on the open market, well, is Shane Flanagan going to make a play for them?
Yeah, most likely. And then he'll let Lachlan Ilias go and move Kyle Flanagan to halfback.
But this is an issue, isn't it? If you think that Kyle Flanagan shouldn't be in first grade, is his dad going to look on the open market for somebody to replace him in the team, or is he not going to look because he wants his son to be playing first grade, and that's going to hold the Dragons back? Yeah, I'm not bagging Kyle Flanagan or anything like that, but that's just simply the way it is for a lot of teams right now with their halves. They have these halves that this is we get what we got, and we don't get upset. We get what we get and we don't get upset because that's all we actually have and that's all that's available on the market, and no one's going to be able to get a Nathan Cleary. It seems like the Panthers have an unlimited line of halves that they can use to fill in or when somebody leaves replace, but that's about it. Only the Panthers. I'll tell you what, there were no indications when Kyle Flanagan was at the Bulldogs that he should have got a gig at another NRL club. There was no... You didn't see any prospect of that happening. You really didn't. Think about Burton's gone. I saw the Bulldogs guys. Burton's down, right? So, who are they going to replace Burton with over at the Bulldogs? All the Bulldogs fans are like, please don't be Hutchison. Okay, so there's talk that Crichton may move to 6 while Burton's out. That's a terrible choice. But that's exactly the same kind of thing, right? What else can you do over at the Bulldogs? Because you don't really have any halves to replace your halves. You got Hutchison that. Let's face it, last year was every time he filled in had a pretty bad game, and so their only choice is to move Crichton to 5'8", taking him out of his best position of strike centre because they don't have halves. I think they did. I think Geraldo did say that they did prepare for this scenario in the off-season. They prepared for the scenario of well, what do we do if one of our halves go down? And Crichton did spend some time training in that position. Look, I'm not saying that he's Matt Burton. Yeah, he's not Matt Burton in 5'8", okay? But Geraldo did say that they have, and I guess most, or you'd hope all teams would prepare for that scenario. What do we do if one of our halves goes down? And I think this was what they trained for, right? We move Crichton to 5'8", and we still have Sexton at halfback. Look, we'll see how it goes. Yeah. We're going to find out. It looks to me that that's what they're going to do. We don't know for sure. The team lists aren't out yet. They're out later on today. But look, we'll see what happens there. Things like that, right? Yeah. They don't have... They're not like the Panthers where... it used to be Jeremy Luai went down, so they have Jack Cogger or Brad Schneider ready-made halves to fill in. Just to fill in. It's like, sweet, we got a ready-made half in playing reserve grade or in our top 30 that can just fill in. Dragons are like, we got Kyle Flanagan and we've got Lachlan Ilias. If one goes down, who are we going to put in? I don't know, maybe Damien Cook could play, I don't know. And then the Bulldogs are kind of in the same boat. There's a few teams like it, though. I only mentioned the Bulldogs and the Dragons because that's our teams. But there's a few teams like it. You look at Parramatta right now, Mitch Moses is down and who's the replacement half? I looked it up this morning. I was wondering it this morning. I'll find it 1 second. Their halves are far from just their only problem, by the way. Yeah, and Yeah, the $13 million man's going well for them.
Oh, Ronald
Volkman. Volkman's halfback with Dylan Brown at 5'8", obviously. Yeah, you'd hope the $13 million man could do a bit better for his current team, but anyway.
We'll get to him in a minute,
yeah.
too. So, yeah, like, if Volkman is your best option, right? So, he's a ready-made 5'8" halfback that's played for Samoa, or... Is it Samoa? Yeah, Samoa. But is he a first-grade full-time half? Like, what else are they going to do? They just have to put Volkman in. But the guys like Brad Schneider, who's the other? Jack Cole is the current partnering Nathan Cleary in the halves.
Yeah, because Blaze Talangi, remember Ivan Cleary said Blaze Talangi hasn't quite come up to speed with the systems at Penrith.
So you see that, right? They bought Blaze Talangi to replace Jerome Luai, and then he's not ready yet, so they've got another perfect ready-made half to fill in until Blaze Talangi's there. And then when Blaze Talangi does come, Jack Cole is definitely going to get a contract at another club because everyone is so desperate for halves. Andrew Johns keeps talking about it as well. All the legendary halves keep talking about it. Like, there's no halves.
Yeah. I saw one of those graphics on. I didn't watch the video, but I saw a graphic on a YouTube video where I think it might have been Andrew Johns and Brad Fittler were talking about it, and the graphic said, well, the number 7 is the most important position on the field. Why are there so few of them out there? It's the most important position. It'd be like in the NFL if there were no quarterbacks. Yeah,
exactly.
Out there.
It is exactly like that. Like, it's bizarre, and like they keep talking about it because it's coached. Being a creative half is coached out of them at junior level. So go fix your juniors. Everyone go fix the juniors, please.
Yeah, there's too much structure at a junior level where there needs to be more off the cuff. Football, because there's only so much preparation you can do. At some point, it does come down to off-the-cuff plays, because a lot of the time you just have to play what's in front of you and play what you see.
I don't know when I can't even really pinpoint when it changed. It was kind of like an over-the-time evolution, but it used to be forwards played exactly the same, because forwards have one job: run forward. You have front row forwards running forward, back rows running angles, and then 7 and 6 would set up plays that were off the cuff for your centres, fullbacks, and wings. Now it's 1 through 17 or 1 through 13 are playing this really structured laneway alley type thing, left and right of the ruck, that kind of thing, and that's where you come into this issue with people like the Dragons. Back to the Dragons.
Yeah.
They've got Lachlan Ilias and Kyle Flanagan. That's the best choice they have. Not disparaging either of those guys, but both of those guys need a better half to partner them if they're going to be halves, right? You know? But you've got those two guys, and that's the best they got, and they don't have anything else.
Yeah, and this is the thing. The thing about Kyle Flanagan is, look, I know he scored those 2 tries, but as you said, you watched the game and you felt like aside from that, he didn't do enough. Yeah. So, like, the way I see it is, like, people might go, oh, you're being harsh saying that, oh, his dad's picking him because he's his son, and it's like, but this is the issue. If you've got the son of the coach in the halves, who's, according to you, not playing well enough, and the team's losing games, then I'm sorry, people are going to start asking those questions. Whether you like it or not, people are going to ask those questions at that point. And this is the problem with having your son playing for your team as a coach. Yeah. Is that if he's in a key position and the team's losing games and he's not playing the way that, the fans want or the club wants, well, then people are going to start asking these questions and going, well, is he only in the team because of his dad? Would he be in the team if his dad wasn't the coach? People are going to ask those questions if the team's losing games and he's not, he's not delivering, aside from the 2 tries, of course.
Yeah, no. Like I said, 15 minutes ago when the Rabbitohs were back in the game, you needed a senior player, someone to run the team and get them to step up and defend out the game. And there was nobody who did it. See, although Kyle Flanagan scored 2 tries, he let the team down by not stepping up and leading the team to...
That's the thing. He scored 2 tries, but his job is more than just to score 2 tries. His job as a half, or as a 5/8, is to, assist the halfback in organising the team, guiding the team around the field, playing a playmaking role on one side of the field. That's his job.
One of the 45 captains or the halves or the hooker or the fullback to step up and say, hey, guys, we need to defend this out, organise a defence. Where even when they got up to a tied game, like that field goal that they kicked was off the cuff. The Dragons should have kicked a field goal on their previous set. They were shaped for it and they were ready for it and it was there and they didn't. They chose not to. Again, Haas' mistake. Goes up the end of the field and it's clear the Rabbitohs aren't ready for it and they pass it to their number 7, whoever he was, and he just like, boop! And the rest of the Rabbitohs like, oh, well, we're going for a field. Oh, we got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of thing that you needed, and it just wasn't there from anyone in the Dragons, unfortunately. And now we'll see what happens this week against the bye.
Look, it's the winger's job to just score tries.
Yeah.
But the 5/8, you want more than that.
Exactly.
It's, again, it's just about their job is to, I think the halfback's the boss of the side, but the 5/8 job is to, assist the halfback in organising the team, take some pressure off the halfback, general play kicking, organising the team on one side of the field. It's a lot more than just scoring a couple of tries.
Let's move on to Clint Gutherson's Eels.
Yes.
Who are in a world of hurt at the moment. Mitchell Moses' injury's been extended, so he'll be out for longer than expected. Might miss Origin, is one report I saw. Everyone's bagging them for letting Clint Gutherson go, but I don't think that would have made any difference with the shocking way that they're playing.
That's the thing. I mean, I think people tend to fall into that trap a little bit, don't they? Where, a star player leaves the club and they go, "Oh, if they still had him, it would have been a lot different." Well, would it really? I don't think so. I think this is just, unfortunately for Parramatta, this is just part of a long rebuilding process. Yeah. Sometimes you have to take more pain in the short term for the long-term benefit. They've had to let players go like Clint Gutherson.
I think they've got to accept the wooden spoon or close to it this
sometimes you have to take a bullet.
Because it's that year that Jason Riles has got to actually turn the team into his own. And
it's sort of like that first year Cameron Ciraldo had at the Bulldogs, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Fresh coach that people are saying, man, he shouldn't have taken the job as early. They should have waited for the rebuild. No, he has to go in there. He has to be given his chance to change everything, bring in his own staff, change all of his players, build a team that he wants, and then start playing in the way that he wants. It's unfortunate that Mitch Moses is out, but I don't think he would have made a difference either. Their defence is, shocking.
Yeah.
The Tigers walked through them.
They conceded 88 points in the first 2 rounds. And, all right, it's one thing to concede a lot of points against Melbourne, but to do it against the West Tigers in that fashion...
They walked through them. It was like the length of the field tries from kick returns.
Unbelievable.
But it's like I said, I also can't blame Jason Riles. He has to do a clean out. And it's going to be a lot of pain until he starts training at Gracie Humatar's meet and Grange and starts getting his defence up. And then I fully see this going the same way as the Bulldogs. You're going to have a lot of player dissatisfaction from guys who have been there for a while that are not going to be happy with the way things are going because they've been used to mediocrity. And that's how, Bulldogs, that's how they were used to mediocrity. They were used to not having to try. They were used to not having hard training sessions. And then the guy comes in and says, all right, we're going to go do wrestling rounds with Robert Whittaker and his team. Technically, it's Camden Valley Wrestling, which is in Robert Whittaker's gym. But and they're all like, no, this is too hard. I don't want to be here. Sending text messages to each other and having to be let go.
Yeah, that's right. And Regan Campbell-Gillard's another one who's left the club as well. But it's a case of looking at it and going, all right, well, they might come last without Gutherson and Campbell-Gillard. If they had Gutherson and Campbell-Gillard, they might have come, 14th or something, right? So it's like, well, at some stage you got to take a bit of short-term pain for the long-term benefit. Yeah, all right, they could have kept Gutherson and Campbell-Gillard and maybe not come last this year. But, what's that? And then you're not even addressing the problem. And then you're keeping these players who aren't getting you anywhere anyway. At least Riles is he's making a start on the rebuilding process.
Exactly.
And it's a long process. But, let's not judge Jason Riles on 2 games. This is a long-term rebuild. And this would have been difficult for any coach. And it's difficult for him because he's come off being the assistant coach at the Melbourne Storm with Craig Bellamy, that great roster they have, and doing a great job there as an assistant coach. It's one thing doing that, it's another thing coming into a struggling club and being the head coach and having to make a start on a long rebuild as well. It's a completely different assignment for Jason Ryles. There's going to be some short-term pain, there's no doubt about it. But, in 2 or 3 years' time, we might be sitting here going, yeah, they needed to do that. They needed to let those players go at that time.
Go back to Cameron Cirrato came into the Bulldogs in 2023, right?
Yes.
That was his horrible...
Yes. That was that horrible first year where they came third last.
So you go look at... It's not about the names, it's about the numbers, right? So they lost in 2024 for the following year. Jake Averillo, Corey Waddell, Kyle Flanagan, Raymond Fatala-Mariner, Paul Adamodi, Tavita Pingai Jr., Luke Thompson, Jaden Ockenball, Braden Burns, Brandon Clark, Declan Casey. 11 players they let go.
Yeah.
They did a clean out. And then they gained Bronson Cherry, Stephen Crichton, Jameson, Blake Taft, Daniel Suluka Fafita, Josh Curran, Kurt Mann, Jake Turpin, Drew Hutchison, Asa Famasuli, Connor Tracy, Zane Tedesvano. They replaced 11 players, man.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, Cameron Cirrato's so bad. But Jason Ryles is in the exact same boat right now. The exact same boat. Yes, Parramatta made the grand final
2022.
Yeah, a few years ago. But let's face it, 2023, 2024 was nothing to write home about. And they need a clean out and they need a whole attitude change. Otherwise, they're not going to win anything.
That's right. And as I think I might have mentioned before, conceding 88 points in the first 2 rounds, that's just not good enough. And you would hope the $13 million man would deliver a bit more, wouldn't you?
Well, no, he's getting booed.
Yeah, so a bit of a segue for us.
Yeah, and some would say rightly so. Signed his $13 million deal that I have not yet seen a single media pundit, fan, anyone, internet sentiment that agreed, that thought it was a good idea. Oh. Apparently there's no get-outs in there, which he takes it as like, I'm committed. That's his thing, Dylan Brown's thing. You can tell how committed I am. There's no get-outs. There's no way I can break the contract. But you know what that actually means? If the Knights want to get rid of him, they have to pay out his contract.
Yeah.
It's actually better for the player to have no get-outs. No way to end the contract early on a 10-year contract. Because if it doesn't work after 2 years, what are the Knights going to do?
Yeah. It's madness because they were the only ones offering him that deal. Nobody else was offering him that deal. Like a $1.3 million deal, that's got to go to somebody who's in hot demand on the market, with a number of clubs bidding for his services. Then you could maybe justify it. But no one else wanted him. And they've offered him $1.3 million. It's $1.3 million a season for 10 years, so a $13 million deal. I think Parramatta, their fans might be booing right now, and it's hard to look into the future, right? But I think in the long term, they're better off here because they're dodging a bullet by not having to pay overs for somebody who hasn't really delivered for them. They haven't done well in the past 2 seasons. They've had a terrible start to this season as well, with him there at the club.
We just talked about how all these clubs don't have halves. And no one was offering Dylan Brown that much money.
Nobody else.
I mean, a bunch of clubs probably thought about it, like, $600,000-$700,000 because we need a half.
But they would have known. The other clubs would have known that we're not going to get him at the price that we want to get him on.
Yeah.
If we're going to get him, he was on $1.1 million at Parramatta a season. And so clubs would have looked at it and gone, if we're going to get this guy, we're going to have to pay a ridiculous amount for him, which they would have. I mean, he's getting $1.3 million a year at Newcastle. So they would have just gone...
You think about what we just talked about. The best the Dragons have is Kyle Flanagan and Lachlan Ilias. Again, not bagging them. That's the best choice we have because there's not many halves on the market. Dylan Brown was coming off contract. Is Dylan Brown a better half than Kyle Flanagan and Lachlan Ilias? Most people would say yes. But the Dragons didn't offer him money. Because he's not worth $1.3 million. Sorry, Dylan. Well, you are worth what someone will pay for you. But we can all say the Newcastle Knights have made a mistake, and the Eels fans are unhappy about it, and deservedly so. He's going to get booed probably for the rest of the year.
Well, this is the thing, and look, they're probably booing. They're probably booing as well because the Eels fans. maybe because they're really looking at it and going, well, he's just not worth the money, given that he hasn't really delivered for the Eels either. That's probably where the frustration is. They're probably looking at it and going, how are you going to get $1.3 million a year? How are you getting a $13 million deal over 10 years when you haven't really delivered for us? That's probably where a lot of the frustration is. Again, that having been said, you can't blame Dylan Brown himself.
Of course he's going to take it.
And this is the other side of it is, to all those Eels fans booing him, what I would say to them is, what would you have done in his position? Like, seriously.
100% of rugby league players would have taken that deal.
100% of those fans booing him, if they were in Dylan Brown's position, they're taking the $13 million 10-year deal. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the other side of it, is the people booing him, I go, if you were in his position, we all know what you'd be doing. I'd be doing it, you'd be doing it, we would all be doing it.
It's not going to make him better. The Eels fans that are booing him, it's not going to motivate him very much. So you can't expect the Eels to get better with Dylan Brown to get better if they're just going to keep hammering him as well. If I was him, and most people would be like, "Oh, screw you guys! I'm going to try less then. I'm out of here next year anyway. We're going to get the wooden spoon anyway. It's round 2. We've conceded 88 points. These guys hate me. I just won't try very hard."
That's the thing, and I did see some quotes from Jason Riles where he was talking about. I sort of looked at it, he was saying something like, we just need, because, obviously Jason Riles doesn't care about Dylan Brown leaving next year. I mean, he needs to get the best out of him now. He needs something from him now, straight away. And so I saw some quotes from Jason Riles saying, look, we need Dylan to do this and this to sort of fit into our system this year. I'm sort of looking at that and going, if Dylan Brown's reading that, he's going, what do I care? I'm getting $10 million. Right. I'm getting $13 million over the next 10 years at Newcastle.
2 rounds in and we're already got the spoon. We're going to get the spoon. Like, why do I care?
That's it. And surely Dylan
and
Brown...
all these guys hate me and keep booing me. Why would I do anything?
If you're Dylan Brown, where's the incentive to bend your back this year for Parramatta? He knows he's going to be getting $13 million for the next 10 years at Newcastle. Surely his only goal this year is to just not get injured, really.
Yeah.
What else would he care about this year?
That's
And again, I'm not saying that he's not going to try. Of course he's going to try, but you know what I mean? You sort of
I totally know what you mean.
I'm sort of thinking, if I'm looking at those quotes from Jason Riles, if I'm Dylan Brown looking at those quotes, I'm going, look, what do I care about this? I'm going to be getting $13 million over the next 10 years at another club. Why should I care?
Yeah, I think the Parramatta fans might want to calm their farm, because all they're doing is motivating him to try less. Because like I said, why does he care? He's going for $13 million. He's a multi-millionaire now.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If I was Dylan Brown, I would not care less about fans booing me. If I'm about to go and win Powerball, earning $13 million.
Exactly. It's the kind of thing I always, when people tell me, if I won the lottery, I'd keep working. And I always tell them, you wouldn't, man, because the minute your boss told you to do something, you would be like, why am I here? As soon as you got in trouble at work, you'd be like, I don't need to sit here for this, I'm rich. And out the door you'd go. And that's him. He's just going to sit there going, I'm a multi-millionaire, I won the lottery, why am I here? What do I care? You guys boo me all you want. Yeah. I'm going to get my paycheck every week either way. I don't know if Dylan Brown is that kind of person. Hell, it could motivate him to be like, screw you guys, I'm going to be the best I can be. But if I was him, that's the kind of person I am. I'd be like, up you guys, I'm not going to try.
It isn't like he's getting $13 million up front. Like, it is over 10 years, but I mean, still, it's a huge payday for an NRL player.
And over at Manly, during their game in which they also lost.
Yes.
Very frustratingly. What a bloody...
For your tips and my tips.
Schizophrenic team they are.
Yes.
Man, Daly Cherry-Evans and Tom Trbojevic both came off the field, right?
Yes.
Daly Cherry-Evans with back spasms. Looking for a new 2-year contract. And Tom Trbojevic with hamstring tightness.
As you said, Cherry-Evans assisted from the field with back spasms. Tom Trbojevic, hamstring tightness. The good news is they've both been cleared of serious injury. Cherry-Evans, I think he's going to play against the Raiders this weekend. And Tom Trbojevic, I understand, is a 50-50 chance of playing. So that's the good news.
Maybe they should have taken Tom Trbojevic off the field last week.
Well, we did talk about it last week, didn't we? We talked about it last week. They had that huge win over the Cowboys in round 1. They could have taken Tom Trbojevic off 20 minutes before full time in that game easily. They were up. I think they were up 42-0 with 8 minutes to go in that game. The game was locked away with 20 to go. They could easily have taken him off, and if they had taken him off, well, maybe he doesn't have the hamstring tightness against the Warriors, and if he doesn't have the hamstring tightness against the Warriors, maybe they would have been a lot better chance of winning the game, even though they lost by 20. It was Michael Chammas who said he's a 50-50 chance of playing in that game on the weekend. So thankfully, not serious injuries, but we did talk about this. Manly need to manage Tom Trbojevic better with this long injury history that he has.
I saw a quote, I can't remember who it was, about Tom Trbojevic saying, it was someone big like Gus or Andrew Johns or someone, it'd be a travesty if he goes through his entire career without playing fullback for the Blues. It was Gus. Like, not saying they should drop Dylan Edwards because Dylan Edwards is Dylan Edwards, but when you really think about it, right? Would you want Tom Trbojevic playing fullback for the Blues? Because...
Well, it's too much of a risk in a big game. It's too risky. It's obviously it's got nothing to do with his ability. On ability, you would.
Yeah, absolutely. If Daly M winning.
Yeah, and look, on ability, yeah, you would have. I'd have him ahead of Dylan Edwards at fullback for New South Wales. But Dylan Edwards is a much safer bet because he doesn't have the same injury history that Tom Trbojevic has.
I have no doubt if Tom Trbojevic wasn't injured as much as he has been, he would be widely regarded as the best fullback, of the 2000s. He would have surpassed Billy Slater, Darren Lockyer, all those guys as fullbacks, But unfortunately, he has those injury risks, and you let him play a full game one week, and then the next week he gets hamstring tightness, and it's his hamstrings that cause him problems. So
that's right, and why? And you sort of go, Dylan Edwards is the incumbent in that position, and New South Wales won the Origin series last year, and so if you think about again Tom Trebojevic's injury susceptibility. You sort of go, well, why would you mess with that? The safe option surely is to go with Dylan Edwards to start the series. At least I'm not saying you have to leave him there. It's a long series. You don't have to leave him there for the 3 games if you pick him for the first game. But surely what Dylan Edwards did last year in playing fullback in a series-winning team and factoring in, as we say, the long or the high chance that Tom Trbojevic will go down with an injury. Surely that gets Dylan Edwards the nod, I would have thought, for game 1. But yeah, anyway, a couple of interesting quotes out of that game. Paul Gallen's actually had a bit of a crack at Trbojevic. He said, and I quote, "The thing about Turbo is, as great a player as he is, and he is, I'm not trying to take anything away, he lacks a bit of resilience," Gallen said. And quote, Gallen says, "When something goes wrong against him or he's not feeling 100%, his body language is all over the place, and that was so evident last night." End quote.
I think he's just worried about being injured. That's really like a sports psychology thing, that he's had so many injuries. If something feels a little bit bad, it's like, oh. I know guys who have come back to jiu-jitsu from knee injuries. Right, and they're just hobbyist guys, but like devastating year-long knee injuries who come back and they're there for 6 months and get a slight twinge and then take 6 months off.
Yeah.
Because they're just so afraid of having that injury again. Even though you'll be like, "How's your knee?" Or a few weeks later they'll be like, "Oh, I got scans and there was nothing wrong," but they don't come back for 6 months. Because they're so worried about it. So Paul Gallen may be kind of right, but I think you got to worry more about the motivations. Why is Tom Trbojevic like that? Why is when he gets a bit of twinge or something's going wrong, his body language goes down? It's because he's probably afraid of being injured.
Yeah. He's just had so many serious injuries that it's just in his head straight away. If there's some slight problem, he's thinking, "Oh no, am I going down again?" And then he's his highest priority, if there's a hint of an injury like there was against the Warriors, his highest priority is just, all right, just don't get injured here.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's going to have some sort of impact on your performance sometimes, right?
Absolutely. You're not going to run as hard. You're not going to hit the line.
Your sole focus is on, this can't be a serious injury. Because it's better if we just lose this game and I can play next week than me going down with a serious injury and being out for most of the year.
Absolutely.
So his priorities obviously change in that scenario. And just while we're talking about Daly Cherry-Evans as well, I was just going to bring up an important point. I'm not sure if you saw it, but we were talking about Dylan Brown before, and a lot of people were comparing the Dylan Brown deal to Daly Cherry-Evans' long-term deal at Manly, saying... people were saying, it's not the same as DCE, like DCE, it's been worth it for Manly, the long-term deal. And I'll just say, look, it may sound controversial because he's one of the superstars of the competition, but I'll just say, well, look, Manly haven't won a premiership since Cherry-Evans signed that long-term deal, I know he has won a premiership at Manly, but that came in his first season with the club back in 2011 when he was a kid and he wouldn't have been on much money. He signed that big long-term lifetime deal in 2015. They haven't won a premiership since he signed that lifetime deal. And he did win a Clive Churchill medal in a team that lost the grand final in 2013. So he's done everything but win. I mean, he won one premiership in 2011. Since then, he's done everything for the club but win another premiership. But you know what I'm saying? It's just like people were quick to say, but Cherry-Evans is different. That's been well worth it for Manly. And you go, yeah, but they haven't won a premiership. This was 10 years ago that he signed that lifetime deal, and they haven't won a premiership since then. I'm just throwing it up as a discussion point.
That was at a time which Manly was going through a phase where they've set themselves up to how they are now, where they can't manage their salary cap, and that's that's major contributing factor to that issue with Manly's salary cap.
Yeah.
10 years ago, they made a decision that tied up millions and millions of dollars in Daly Cherry-Evans and left them with no option, because he had probably also had the same thing. They were never going to let him go. He's one of the best halfbacks of the modern era.
I mean, he did nearly go to the Titans, but he backflipped. Yeah.
But they were never going to sack him early or anything like that. But if they had have, I don't know how it would have worked with his contract. And it has been, like we've talked about it so much, Manly's issue is really their salary cap management. Daly Cherry-Evans is a major contributor to that. Apparently, he wants to play on another 2 years. Some other clubs are circling. Manly's offered him $600,000 for one extra year. So that'll clean up some of their salary cap a bit, I guess. And I don't think any club should be doing any of those 10-year deals. It was the same as Tomalolo at the Cowboys. It was stupid to sign him for 10 years. Not that he's not... it's not stupid for him to sign, but it's stupid to sign him for 10 years. It was same with Buddy Franklin in the AFL. The Swans should never have signed him for 10 years.
Yeah, I'm just going to look at when did Taumalolo sign the 10 years.
One might have been 9 years as well. It was super weird.
I'm going to look at when Taumalolo signed that 10-year deal.
What's he done?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Taumalolo signed the 10-year deal in 2017. Cowboys haven't won a premiership since 2017.
They haven't come close.
So these clubs, I think they made the grand final in 2017, but Melbourne pumped them in the grand final, so they didn't really. But since then, they haven't been in the grand final.
When Jason Taumalolo was so good, he was worth a $10 million.
That's the thing, and look, they did make the grand final that year, but that was one of those seasons where that was just a battle for coming second, right? Yeah. The Storm were always going to win the grand final easily that year. It was like in 1998 when the Broncos had that star-studded side and the Bulldogs made the grand final, and that was just a battle for to come second. Everybody knew the Broncos were going to win the comp that year.
Everyone else can see who comes second.
Yeah. Well, that was how it was. But I just thought, I noticed a few commentators, a few members of the media saying, look, let's compare it to DCE's deal. DCE hasn't won a premiership at Manly since he signed the long-term deal, but it still worked for Manly. This is what people have said, and then I've gone, well, I know he's a superstar player. I know he's one of the superstar players of the NRL, but how do you justify it if there's been not one premiership win since he signed the long-term deal? You can compare it
by making people realise that it's a bad idea to sign any player to a 10-year deal, because the two 10-year deals that have happened in rugby league have both been for clubs by clubs that haven't won premierships since they.
This is the thing. It's not about. We all know Cherry-Evans is a superstar player. Everybody knows
Everyone
that.
Would buy him.
But it's not about him as a player. It's about you're paying him this amount of money, so that takes away what you can spend on other players.
Exactly.
It's not about Cherry-Evans himself. It's about the impact that paying him that amount has on the rest of your salary cap spend on the rest of your roster.
Exactly. And then over to the Broncos. Everyone's blaming Reece Walsh for their loss to the Raiders.
Yes.
I predicted this kind of pattern, and we'll see if it continues with the Broncos, if you remember, that they would be inconsistent because they won't know how to manage their spine. What kind of happened? I watched that game. I found what kind of happened is when the Broncos were losing, neither Ben Hunt nor Adam Reynolds knew who needs to take over. You know, whose job is it to take over? Both of them went into themselves to try and take over. Meanwhile, out the back, you have young superstar Reece Walsh thinking that he's going to stand up and do the X Factor and touch the ball too much. And the halves weren't saying, no, let's bring Reece Walsh into the game when he's needed and get us back on top. Like all the hate is on Reece Walsh right now, but isn't it Reece Walsh wasn't getting the ball from dummy half and running it. Like he was being passed the ball too much, or getting in the way of the plays, and he needed a half to sit down. Not sitting down, turn around and go, bro, I'm the senior half here. I'm running the game. Sit down, shut up. I'll bring you into the game when I need to. Yeah, he did some like really ridiculous errors, like kicking out on the full off a kickoff. That's a coach killer. Like
you can't be doing that at that level. No. You just can't do it.
No, it was.
That's the thing. If the other team just beats you because they were better than you on the day, all right, that's one thing. But to kick out on the full like that off a kickoff, that's just unforgivable. That's just handing the opposition an advantage.
That Bulldogs Dragons game was really funny because actually Clint Gutherson almost kicked the ball out, and I can't remember which Bulldogs player collected it. All he had to do was take a 1 centimetre step back and it would have been out on the full.
Yeah. Look, that might have been Montoya, maybe.
Yeah, it was, everybody, it was like all Dragons fans was like, oh, thank God. And all Bulldogs fans were, what are you doing?
Yeah, he should start. If you're an outside back and you have an idea that it could go over the dead ball line, take a quick look back, put your foot on the line, and then reposition yourself.
But so Reece Walsh kicked it so far out,
and he made 4 errors, missed 4 tackles, and ran for just 96 metres. That's a pretty underwhelming return from Reece Walsh.
But I really think because he's the most famous player right now, he's taking a lot of the flack from. I think Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds had poor games and they didn't have good communication, because it's in that situation that I was talking about that I predicted, and we'll see if it keeps happening, where they're going to have some games where they go really well, and they're going to have some games where no one in the team knows really whose job it is. Even if the coach, who's their coach?
The Broncos.
Yeah, Michael Maguire. Even if Michael Maguire sits them down on the weekend and says, Adam Reynolds is king of the team, you got to think, when the team is going poorly or getting on the back foot, Ben Hunt, being 408 years old and having played in grand finals and State of Origin winning teams and for Australia and stuff like that. Has he played for Australia?
Ben Hunt.
Yeah, Ben Hunt.
Yeah.
He's going to go, oh, God, I've got to really step up here and take the hold of this team and get it all done, which is going to push Adam Reynolds off to the side. And I think it'll happen if they get on the back foot, especially a lot, until they have a clear guideline of Ezra Mam coming back.
Yeah. And look, to be fair, well done to the Raiders. That was a good win by them. 2 wins in a row to start the season. Been critical of them in the past because they haven't had good results for a while now. But you got to give them credit. 2 wins from 2. They've been really good to start the season.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they're not going to win the spoon though. I've still got them spooning. Yeah,
it doesn't. But yeah, look, so far so good. 2 wins from 2. So well done to the Raiders and well done to Ricky Stewart. You have to say.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Who have they got this week? The Raiders. The Sea Eagles at home. The Sea Eagles home at 4 Pines Park. with no Tom Trbojevic. So they could very well go 3-0.
He's 50-50, yeah. So Cherry-Evans is going to play. Trbojevic is 50-50, so he might play, might not play.
We talked about that a few weeks ago where they have like a 42% win rate without Trbojevic. So if he doesn't play, we may see the Raiders 3-0 for the start of the season.
Yeah, well, if Trbojevic isn't playing, I'd favour the Raiders there for sure.
And with the Cowboys, we did mention the Cowboys.
Yes. Another struggling club who haven't won a game yet.
Well, I thought Adam O'Brien would be the guy who's on the outer. Tipped him for the first coach to lose his job this year, as I do every year. But it's looking like it's going to be Todd Payten because the Cowboys are diabolical.
Yeah. I just feel like... I don't know if you feel the same way, but you just watch the coach Todd Payten after games in press conferences. I think and I know they've had a bad start. I know they've lost their first 2 games, but he seems to give off a lot of negative energy in the press conference. He sounds so dreary in the press conference. He doesn't sound upbeat at all. And I think that's got to be a problem. If you're a Cowboys player and you're watching his press conferences, if I'm a Cowboys player looking at that, I'm going, look, do I really want to play for this guy? He just looks so dreary in press conferences, like he doesn't want to be there. He seems pessimistic about his own team's fortunes. Is it just me, or he needs to be a bit more positive? He needs to have more positive energy. He needs to show more enthusiasm. Like, come on, Todd, like, liven up a bit. Like, you're an NRL coach here. Like, put some buzz into your work here. Is that a fair comment?
I don't think there's anything positive he can take away from the way the Cowboys are playing.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not just about... Look, I know they've lost their first 2 games. It's not just about how he reacted after that loss, right? This is an ongoing thing that I've noticed over a long period of time. Even when they're going well, I don't think he gives his team enough credit either. I don't think he gets up and about enough about it. And I know coaches have to keep a lid on things to a degree. I get that. But I just feel like he's just negative all the time. And there's just nowhere near enough positive energy from him in press conferences. I think he needs to look... He needs to think, like, how am I going to get these players to play for me?
Yeah, I think he's... he'll be... I've got him now for, like, round 6, first coach to go. With the way I reckon he smells it as well, because the way the Cowboys... I think Parramatta's playing badly. At least they've got excuses, right? Parramatta's going through a rebuild, new coach. They had to let go of all their best players. One of their remaining best players is signed to go to a new arrival for the richest contract in history. Their star halfback is out. Like, they got excuses. What is the Cowboys' excuse?
That's the thing, and I know coaches have to play bad cop. I get that. That's part of the job. But your players also have to like you as well. They have to, and they have to want to play for you as well. If the players don't want to play for you as a coach, then you've got a problem. And it doesn't matter which team it is. If the 4 or 5 best players at the team go to the CEO on the board and say, we don't want this coach anymore, the CEO and the board, they have to act. Because if they don't act on that, well, then the club's going to implode. If you've got a bunch of the senior players not wanting the coach and you just leave the coach there, then there's going to be all sorts of strife. And then the heat will come onto the CEO. So if the star players go to the CEO and say, we don't want this coach anymore, the CEO has to act on that. And Todd Payten doesn't seem to have done a very good job at making his players want to play for him at this point.
They are, like, shocking. They don't have any excuse.
Well, why would you... Again, if I'm a Cowboys player looking at those press conferences, where's the incentive to play for this guy? He's so negative about everything all the time. There's no positivity there. There's no optimism. You have to... Yes, they've had a terrible start, but you have to have a degree of optimism. You've got to get them out of the hole that they're in. And he just...
I don't think they... Who have they got this week? The Broncos. So they're going to go... They're highly likely to go 0-3. And I think, it'll be one of those... After this week, if they get smashed again. Because they're not just losing, they're getting smashed. missing tackles. They just don't look like a cohesive, good team.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those things where after this week, if they get smashed again, the Cowboys board will come out and say Todd Payten has the full support of the board.
Yeah. And then you know you're in trouble, right?
So, yeah,
But yeah.
And it's been an ongoing thing for since he's... How long has he been there? 2 years now?
Todd Payten.
Yeah, I think this is his third year.
I'll have a look at that.
Ongoing thing where, they're just getting worse and worse and worse, and his attitude has been... Well, his personality in press conferences and stuff like that has just been not very positive.
Yeah, he's been there since the start of 2021, yeah. So he's been there a while now.
5 years, yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned it. They've been thrashed twice, 42-12 loss to Manly and a 36-12 loss to the Sharks. And that was a Sharks team that's come back from Vegas, had a bit of a Vegas hangover, and then they had to travel to Townsville as well. So they had a home game against a team that's come off a Vegas hangover, and they've lost 36-12.
It did not look good.
And no, that's right. And you talk about they're playing the Broncos. Michael Maguire is not going to be going easy on his players after that loss to the Raiders. They're going to be a team that bounces back after losses this year because of the coach that they have. I don't think it's going to be pretty for the Cowboys, that game on Friday night against the Broncos.
Todd Payten is about to get full support of the board.
Yeah, also, if you're framing a market on the first coach to go, well, he's got to be the favourite, doesn't he?
Yeah, beginning of the year, every year, it's got to be Adam O'Brien.
Yeah, well, if you look at...
but
I think there's...
the Knights have won 2, right?
I think, there's 4 clubs who haven't won a game. The Dragons, the Dolphins, the Cowboys and the Eels. The Eels have got a new coach. They're not going to sack their coach now. The Dolphins have got a new coach. They're not going to sack their coach now. The Dragons aren't going to sack Flanagan. He's there for the long haul. So, of the 4 clubs who have lost both games this year, Payten clearly is the most likely to be sacked. The Titans haven't won a game, but they've only played the one game because they had the bye in the first round as well. So, you mentioned the Knights. Yeah, they're 2 from 2 wins as well. Yeah.
Speaking of the Dolphins, who are currently suffering from the Wayne Bennett curse, haven't won a game. It is only 2 games into the season, but they also don't look good. And Andrew Johns has highlighted that, they just don't look good. They got pumped by the Knights. You have a look at some of these stats for them. They had more possession, 52% possession. But their completion rate was only 73%, 31 from 42. Absolutely terrible. They got beat in every attacking stat except for the number of runs. So they ran more, but for less metres. Yeah. Because they dropped the ball a lot more. Their post-contact metres was 60 less than the Knights. So they ran more, 4 less metres, and when they hit the line, it was worse. Only 2 line breaks. Only 29 tackle breaks to 39. And then you look at the negative plays. 10 errors, 5 penalties, 1 ruck infringement. And even then, the Knights had 5 ruck infringements and 4 penalties. And 11 errors. More ruck infringements, but still the Dolphins couldn't score.
Yeah. Andrew Johns has had a crack at the Dolphins over their discipline. At one stage, he labelled their discipline as, quote, terrible. After they turned over possession with a number of roll balls, this new crackdown, not putting your foot on the ball. Jeremy Marshall-King was guilty of that on numerous occasions. Andrew Johns said, and I quote, "Once again, the discipline, that's the second time tonight, really poor," talking about this roll ball. He says, "They all know, all off-season they've been told they need to be better. I would make him," he's talking about Marshall-King, "get to training and do 1,000 of them." And Cameron Smith had a bit of a crack at them as well. Yeah, as you said, they missed 39 tackles, made 10 errors, and as you pointed out, conceded those 5 penalties.
But the thing is that the Knights actually had, worse discipline. That's the thing. The Knights had worse discipline. But the Dolphins' defence, 39 missed tackles, unacceptable.
They had worse discipline, but they just defended it better.
Yeah.
They defended it better. And look, we've got to start looking at the Dolphins and going, well, I know they're a new club and everything, but in 2023, all right, they finished 13th, all right, it was their first season. 2024, they finished 10th after they had that really good start, and we know all about how Wayne Bennett took his eye off the ball and started coaching another club when he was still coaching them, and that catastrophe that was. But anyway, they finished 10th last year, and this year they've lost their first 2 games of the season. At some point, you got to go, well, when is the new boys on the block going to aim up and show something here?
Well, I think it's just the Wayne Bennett hangover. I think they're going to be screwed. I think Kristen Wolf will be the latest in a long line of post Wayne Bennett coaches that has a job and then never gets another job.
So you'd have to say that, like, given Wayne Bennett's history of leaving his clubs in a heap, which you've talked about many times. I mean, he did it to your club. You'd have to say that if you starting an establishment club in the NRL, Wayne Bennett's not the coach to start your club because he's going to leave you in it. That's the thing. He didn't do, and I know he was there only for 2 seasons, their first 2 seasons. He didn't make the 8 in both seasons, and then he always leaves a trail of destruction after he leaves. So if you're starting a new club, he's not the coach you want, given his history of leaving that trail of destruction.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the coaches. That's the thing. I feel really sorry for Christian Wolf, who is trying to dig himself out of a Wayne Bennett-made hole, and Wayne Bennett makes a big hole.
This could take years. That's the thing. It's almost like
Dragons still haven't recovered. Broncos still haven't recovered. Newcastle still hasn't recovered.
That's the thing. And so they started in 2023. They may as well be starting now because they got to start all over again now.
Exactly. I feel so bad for them. I don't care though, they're Queenslanders. But no, I feel bad for them because I know what it's like, and it's way worse for the Dolphins because they're a new club and they have a new fan base. And
that's the thing. As a fan of the game, you want the new club to do well. You want the expansion club to do well. It's important for the growth of the game. We all want to see better from the Dolphins. This hasn't been a good start.
No, exactly. What was his name?
Richard Agar.
Richard Agar copped a $10,000 fine and was suspended for grabbing the throat of a journalist.
So Agar was hit with a $10,000 fine, half of which will be suspended. So it's half suspended, so it's a $5,000 fine.
Suspended means if he does it again, he'll get fined, right? So what? If you're going to grab the throat of another journalist, it'll be $10,000. If he doesn't, then it's only $5,000.
Suspended for 3 games and a $5,000 fine. That's a far too lenient punishment for the offence. He should have been sacked. We said it at the time. How does he get off with just a $5,000 fine and a 3-game suspension for grabbing a journalist by the throat?
It's a bit bizarre.
That's not good enough that's not good enough at all. It should have been a much harsher punishment.
Whose job is it to sack him? The Warriors or it's not the NRL, right? Well, is the NRL going to go to them and say you have to sack him? So the NRL.
Look, I think it's the club's job to sack him, but the NRL could put the hard word on if they wanted to.
They give him the suspension and then it's left it to the Warriors.
But if the NRL,
so what have the Warriors done?
But this is the thing. So that's the thing. If the NRL want this guy to be sacked, they can just go. They can just have a word to the Warriors and say, "Look, you got to get rid of this guy."
You know, like say with Ezra Mam, the NRL fined him $30,000 and the Broncos fined him $90,000. So now you got the NRL's fined this coach. It's not the same as the Ezra Mam situation, okay? But the NRL has given the fine. The Warriors are entitled to also do something. What are they doing? The NRL can go to the Warriors all they want. Can the NRL go to the Warriors and say you have to sack him, and do the Warriors have to listen?
Well, I think it's one of those things.
The NRL
right?
doesn't deregister can't deregister coaches, but they can deregister players. Yeah.
I think if the governing body of the game want someone to be sacked, I think
they can because they banned
word.
Stephen Dankin stuff from operating in so they can ban them. So the NRL and the Warriors haven't done enough in this situation.
No, this is a sacking offence. Yeah. This is just not on grabbing a journalist by the throat.
All journalists offside as well, and that's a dangerous thing.
Well, that's right.
Do the journalists now feel safe around NRL coaching staff? How do you know you're not going to get grabbed by the throat and just a soft fine and a 3-game suspension happens?
Yeah, this is unbelievably lenient. This is just ridiculous. And as you said, the NRL and the Warriors should have done a lot more. Yeah. Well, he should have been sacked. He should have been gone. And look, this, as I say, this is assault. He's grabbed somebody by the throat. This could have been, a criminal matter and everything, and he doesn't even get sacked from his job. Like, come on. Like, it's one thing to have words and just give him a spray.
Not Mark Bell style.
Well, that then you could go, well, all right, well, that happens, if you're a journalist and you're writing about somebody and they don't like it, well, you're going to have to accept it's part of the job that they're going to give you a spray if they don't like what you've written, and that's their right. But to be physical, that clearly you're crossing a line here. He should have been sacked. It's not enough from the NRL and the Warriors here. It's too lenient. It's too light a punishment.
Seems a little bit weird that they did so little. To be honest. But the Kalyn Ponga playing for Australia saga continues. When is that going to end? Stacey Jones wants to see if he can convince Kalyn Ponga to switch to New Zealand instead of Australia.
Yeah.
He didn't want to play for Australia, but that didn't mean he wanted to play for New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so if he doesn't want to play for Australia because he wants to concentrate on Newcastle, how does switching to New Zealand help him concentrate on New Zealand?
This is what I don't get. It's not surely
weird path to take.
It's not just about what you want to do. Like, you're eligible.
He's eligible for both those, apparently.
But it's just like, this is a guy who was born in Western Australia. He's played for Queensland and he's played for Australia in the Nines. And now all of a sudden he wants to play for New Zealand.
Nathan Feen played for Queensland and then New Zealand. Didn't he fake a birth certificate or something as well? Was that the story?
But how do you play? How does it work? You play State of Origin for Queensland and then just turn around and go, I want to play for New Zealand now? And Mal Meninga, the Australian coach, he said, and I quote, "You can't do it. It really is that simple." Well, Mal's right on that.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's nonsensical. But even then, he didn't want to play for Australia to concentrate on Newcastle. How does going and playing for New Zealand help him concentrate on Newcastle? But he does want to play for Australia. Because don't find me. Like, it's a bit of a bizarre thing. Apparently, he qualifies for both, and he chose Australia, and that's it. Don't Nathan Feen that, man. That Nathan Feen debacle was like absolute nonsense, where he went from Queensland to New Zealand. And there was a whole thing about it because his grandmother was born in New Zealand and he's a fake birth certificate or an edited birth certificate or something like that, and they had to change all the eligibility rules and all that kind of nonsense. I understand allowing these players to play for the emerging nations. It's fine. I always think like that's fine. But you can't swap between Australia and New Zealand. It doesn't make any sense, especially if you played State of Origin.
Yeah, and look, Kalyn Ponga wasn't quoted in this Daily Telegraph story, but his dad was.
Of course he was.
Andre Ponga.
If there's one thing you can count on a story about Kalyn Ponga's eligibility, it's that
I think his dad loves a headline and taking credit for his son's success. And so Andre Ponga said, and I quote, he was asked about, his son, what's his son's plans here, because obviously this is a big story. Stacey Jones, of course, the New Zealand coach, of course, he wants Kalyn Ponga. You can't blame him. And so Andre Ponga says, and I quote, "We haven't thought that far ahead or heard anything. The Knights are now his main focus, 1 week at a time," end quote. So, again, sometimes it's not about what they say, it's about what they don't say. Andre Ponga could have said there, "Oh, no, there's absolutely no chance of him playing for New Zealand. He's focused on playing for the Knights and then for Queensland and then for Australia." But no, he didn't say any of that. He didn't say any of that. Could have said that. He was reached out for comment, but didn't say any of that. Instead, dodged the question and said, "Oh, we haven't thought that far ahead." So his dad hasn't exactly put the issue to bed at all here and has left it as a live option. I tell you what, Kalyn Ponga's PR is not very good. That whole business last year of going, "Oh yeah, I don't want to play for Australia," and then when there was a backlash, quickly did a backflip and said, "Oh no, I want to play," and then they left him out anyway. That didn't look very good. And then he goes and plays for New Zealand Maori in the All-Stars game this year. That didn't look very good either. And now it doesn't look very good again, because now there's reports that he wants to play for New Zealand. And all right, he wasn't quoted as saying as much, but he could have hosed down the story, or his dad could have hosed down the story, and they haven't done that.
Oh yeah, and there's the Pacific Cup this year. So he can actually play for New Zealand this year. But can he play for New Zealand after he's played State of Origin? He wants that paycheck, bro.
That's the thing. You can't have it both ways. You go, all right, you want to play for New Zealand, well, then you're not playing State of Origin anymore. But he'll want both, won't he? He'll want it both ways. He'll want to take the big State of Origin paycheck, and he'll want to play for New Zealand as well.
Yeah, and finally with Rugby League, that Paul Gallen, much anticipated Paul Gallen versus Sonny Bill Williams boxing match, which has been talked about for the past 10 years. When did Paul Gallen retire?
I'll just have a look. It might have been about 2019, but I'm going to have a look at that.
Since then, we've been talking about getting Sonny Bill Williams, and we've been hearing about Sonny Bill Williams and Paul Gallen fighting.
Was 2019.
And then finally it's been accepted, except only on the condition, according to Paul Gallen, Sonny Bill Williams says 2-minute rounds only, which Paul Gallen won't accept. 2-minute rounds is a woman's round. The boxing is done in traditionally 3-minute rounds for men, 2-minute rounds for women. Why does he want 2-minute rounds?
Gallen's 43, Sonny Bill's 39. Is there anyone who really wants to watch this?
League of Legends, bro. League of Legends. There's a bunch of... that's what boxing is right now, League of Legends. There's 3 kinds of boxing matches right now. There's ones that nobody watch, which are for actual world titles. There's the fight circuses with Jake Paul. And there's the League of Legends, where it's a couple of old dudes slugging it out. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, we want to watch it, but we don't want to watch 2-minute rounds. Because 2-minute rounds is not worth it in boxing. The round just starts getting going at the second minute. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course we want to watch 2 old men beat each other up. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul was amazing. Yeah. It was the greatest and best thing I've ever watched, I've never watched boxing before in my life.
Yeah, well, these were the quotes from Gallen. He says, and I quote, "I'm not fighting Sonny Bill over 2-minute rounds. It's embarrassing the fact that we're even discussing 2-minute rounds.
He's right.
3-minute rounds is what boxing is for." Mm-hmm. And then he goes on to have more of a crack at Sonny Bill. He says, "Come on, Sonny, seriously, be a man. I'm there. If you want to finally get it done, I will do it over 8 3-minute rounds."
8 is still it's 2 little rounds as well. It should be at least 10. Come on, bro. 10 3-minute rounds. Be a man.
But this is the thing. And Paul Gallen did this on Channel 9's post-game coverage the other night. He's just interrupted and called out Sonny Bill. And Billy Slater was seen on camera just sort of like rolling his eyes and looking the other way, like as if he didn't care. And I can't blame Billy Slater.
Those 2 guys don't like each other.
But they don't. But I can't blame Billy Slater for having that reaction. He's looking at it going, aren't we supposed to be reviewing a game of football here? Paul Gallen's turning it into a call out of Sonny Bill. Look, I don't think Channel 9 would have minded, because it would have given, well, obviously it's got published. Yeah. But then again, they are there to do a post-game show, and Paul Gallen's turning it into a fight call out, calling out Sonny Bill. And Billy Slater was even quoted as saying, "Has our post-match show turned into a negotiation?"
Yes.
So, but that's the thing. I can see why someone like Billy Slater, who's there to review a game of football, is looking at it going, "Look, Paul Gallen, why are you spending this whole time trash talking Sonny Bill here when we're trying to talk about a game of football?"
Because we all want to watch Sonny Bill and Paul Gallen fight. 2 old men beating each other up.
Maybe 10 years ago, not now.
No, it's so funny. It's one of those things that people will watch because you can't look away. Like when Matt Cooper fought Justin Hodges. And see, that's sort of this is a ridiculous fight, right? Like, it's one of those ones where I remember that we talked about that battle for the Reef or whatever it was, Justin Hodges and Matt Cooper, that had a world championship on it. The actual main event was a world championship, world title, and the Matt Cooper and Justin Hodges was the lower on the card, but it was the fight they advertised, because that's what boxing is. World championships that no one cares about because there's too many. Fight circuses with Jake Paul, or old people who play other sports doing boxing. You know what they should do? Do an MMA match.
You'd watch that one.
Oh, yeah. But you notice they all go into it. Really, that kind of thing where you have 2, a 39-year-old and a 43-year-old wanting to get into a boxing ring, ex-rugby league players wanting to get into a boxing ring. People should realise that actually shows how the barrier to entry to boxing is so small. It lowers the quality of what boxing is, and it's one of the reasons why actual legit awesome fights don't get as big a don't get talked about as much in like different countries and stuff like that. But like, what was his name? Recently there was Artur Bodabev versus Dimitri Bivol too. Awesome fight. It was last month. Yep, 20 days ago. Absolutely awesome fight to become the undisputed light heavyweight champion. No one talked about it, but we're talking about Sonny Bill versus Paul Gallen. That doesn't help boxing.
No.
No,
it can't help boxing because boxing... It seems like boxing is relying too much on having washed-up rugby league players fighting one another.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's different in other countries and stuff like that. But I like Dana. They just announced that Dana White signed with I can't remember who. The UFC's basically signed to finally pick up boxing, and they will run it like the UFC. And actually, like, people are very critical of it because the way boxing works is there's a whole bunch of organisations, like so many. George Rose is one. He's the one that puts on these ex-football players. And they have WBO and WNO and blah, 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 and blah, blah, like all these letters. And then there's like 46 different world title belts and stuff like that. And then they're all allowed to cross-fight each other. And then they might fight like, this guy has 3 belts and this guy has 5 belts. And they're putting all of the 8 belts on the line. And whoever wins gets all of those 8 belts. And everyone's going, I don't really know what's being fought here. Yeah. What is the thing? But the way UFC works is all the fighters are in the UFC. They can't go and fight for other organisations. And people are highly critical of it, but it makes the UFC something special. All fighters in other organisations. Because you can't fight in, I don't know, PFL or something, Bellator closed down. You can't fight in PFL and then go and put your PFL belt on the line to fight the UFC champion. No. You have to get out of PFL and then go to the UFC, and you have to fight your way up the divisions. And that makes a UFC belt way better than having 13 weird boxing belts. Yeah.
You're a lot more into the fight sports than me, but as an outsider looking in, what I would say is I think boxing... since Anthony Mundine and Danny Green have retired, boxing in Australia just hasn't had the high-profile fighters there to sell fights, and then so you got to rely on Paul Gallen calling out Sonny Bill Williams, and I think that's left a vacuum. Boxing's left a vacuum that UFC is filling.
So you have guys like Tim Tszyu, Nikita Tszyu, Michael Zarafa was around for a little while and he's coming back now. Justice Hooney. Stuff like that. Guys who are like legit and then they go overseas and get punched, beat up. But that's the thing, right? People don't want to watch those guys. Like, the general population don't want to watch those guys. And so boxing promoters try and find other cut-through. Unlike something like the UFC, right? UFC, there's a fight numbered pay-per-view every month. And what was the last one? It was Alex Pereira. Like, Alex Pereira is the current superstar. He's got a lot of cut-through to non-fight fans, and a bunch of people watch Alex Pereira fights. But you think, right, you probably didn't watch, because he hasn't cut through that much. But if Conor McGregor announced to fight tomorrow, you would watch the Conor McGregor fight. That's the thing.
Fight. The last fights that I watched, not that I watched, but the last fights that I really got into and watched all the lead-up, all the press conference before it, and got into the build-up and really got into it were... basically McGregor and Mayweather when they had that fight, and I think when McGregor fought Khabib
Nurmagomedov,
where I think did people like jump in the ring?
Khabib jumped the fence.
Khabib jumped the fence,
and then a bunch of the other guys jumped the fence to bash Conor.
That was the last time where because you're right into it. I'm an outsider. Yeah. As an outsider, that's the last time I really got into it. And I know that they have talked up these fighters, like Tszyu and I think George Kambosos.
Yeah, he's another one.
So they've been talked up a lot. They have, and they got a bit of a profile, but they just don't have the mainstream profile that an Anthony Mundine or Danny Green had.
They don't cut through, and that's the thing, right? It's because, despite what people may think, my belief, it's because of these silly Paul Gallen versus Sonny Bill fights. Because non-fight fans will watch Sonny Bill and Paul Gallen. No, it's a joke. Paul Gallen probably bashed me in a boxing match, but I could take him down and strangle him. Same with Sonny Bill. But the boxing isn't high quality, and they don't have the big enough personalities and famous people in actual boxing to cut through. Boxing, but I think the Dana White acquisition or creation of now Zuffa Boxing or whatever it is going to be make a big change in that world. I really do. I think it's going to run more like the UFC, and you're going to have like these personalities where you will have some cut through, guys who cut through a little bit, like Alex Pereira, who cuts through to some people, and you'll get like people who go watch a Pereira match, even though they don't normally watch every UFC, and then you'll have other ones like guys that cut through, like Conor McGregor, who will like everyone will watch. Yeah. Conor McGregor still holds, I think it's 9 of the top 10 pay-per-view numbers ever.
Yeah.
You know, like it's crazy.
That's the thing. McGregor got you in as a non-fight fan. He got you in, and that's the thing. I mean, in this instance, Cameron Smith sort of cheekily suggested that, well, Gallen might need the money, and that's why he's doing it. Look, I don't think it's about the money, because he seems insistent on, well, if we're going to do it, it's got to be 3-minute rounds. I'm not doing 2-minute rounds. If it was about the money, he'd just do it. He'd just take the payday and do the 2-minute rounds. I don't think with Gallen it's about the money. I think he just wants the attention, because that's why he's turning a post-game football show into a fight call-out. I think it's just about attention.
I'll watch it anyway if it actually does happen. I would never go, but I'd watch it. Anyway, that's Rugby League for the week. Yes. Let's see if the Dragons can get 2 points at the end of this week. We definitely know the Bulldogs are going to get 2 points, because the Bulldogs have an easier bye than the Dragons do.
I hope you're right. I mean, Kikau and Burton will be missing, but I'm hoping they'll still get it.
Easier bye than the bye. Over to tennis. Former world number 1, Iga Swiatek.
Yes.
Iga Swiatek.
Swiatek, yes.
Swiatek. Is a goofball.
Yeah.
First of all, she's had a tantrum.
Yeah.
Smashed the ball, and it's hit a ball kid. These tennis players, man.
I think it just... I think it might have just missed the ball kid, but she hit it in the ball kid's direction. Could easily have hit the ball kid. Very dangerous. Very just disgraceful behaviour.
I understand tennis is high intensity.
Like that.
It's really high intensity. 1v1. It's quiet. You know, all the world is on your shoulders, basically. But they need to calm down.
Yeah, Swiatek claimed she'd had heard movement from behind her while receiving a mirror on Drever's serve. But what? Oh, she heard movement behind her, so I'm going to hit a ball at a ball kid? What is this?
No. Just calm down.
Just a ridiculous scenario.
She's not liked very much, is she?
No. And look, with good reason. This isn't on. And look, Mirror Andreeva, well done to her. She won the match. She beat Swiatek 7-6, 1-6, 6-3. And I'll just see how that final went. I think that was in the... that was in the semi-finals where Andreeva beat Swiatek. And I'll just see if... Did Andreeva win the final? I'll have a look here. She did. She won the final. She beat Arina Sabalenka in the final in 3 sets. So... well done to her. Only 17 years of age, so well done to her. But yeah, look, a really poor display from Iga Swiatek there. And that comes after she was recently criticised after she was handed a 1-month suspension for testing positive to a banned substance as well. So this is not a good time for Iga Swiatek at all. A 1-month suspension for doping, and this very distasteful incident hitting a ball towards a ball kid that could easily have hit the ball kid.
Yeah, she's been labelled as immature and unprofessional.
Yes.
So
yeah, with good reason.
Exactly. And Rafael Nadal, the king, has appeared on Andy Roddick's podcast.
Yeah.
I have it on my queue, but right now I'm listening to a historical podcast about the Jonestown massacre. So.
Oh, right. So you've got it on your queue.
It's on my queue. My queue's bloody long. This series is the Daryl Cooper that everyone thinks is a racist. But anyway, Marta Madness. What is it? I think it's called that. I can't remember. It's like a 30-hour long series of podcasts about Jonestown. And after that, I put the Rafael Nadal Andy Roddick. Yeah. So I'll get there in like 6 weeks.
Yeah. Look, it's well worth the watch. I have watched all of it. There's a couple of points I found really interesting that Nadal talked about. He says that this is a difference. He talked about the differences between facing Novak Djokovic and facing Roger Federer. He said when he played against Djokovic, it wasn't so much about strategy. It was more about he just needs to play well for a long time against Djokovic to beat Djokovic. It's not so much about having one strategy. Where, as he said, against Federer, there was a clear strategy where he would just go after his backhand. So against Federer, he had that clear strategy. Against Djokovic, he just got to play well over a long time without having one strategy. Another interesting point that he made was he said he felt like Roger Federer in 2017, he felt like Federer was at his best in 2017, which was late in his career. He was 35 at that time. Federer won the Australian Open and Wimbledon in 2017 at the age of 35. But Nadal says, for me, honestly, in 2017, it was the best level of his career. He says, you felt that you were in his hands. He played very, very aggressively, and his serve was so difficult to read for me. It was very difficult to predict what was going on. So I found that interesting that Nadal really dominated Federer up to that point. But then Federer came back later in his career. And in 2017, Nadal felt like at 35, Federer was at his best and found it the most difficult to beat him.
There was a period, I can't really remember. I remember there was a period where it was because, the only reason I know it's because in one of those tennis games, video games, on the Wii, it had the thingy. 1 year to the next, it had the listed play style of the player. Like, this guy is blah, blah, blah. This guy plays from the back of the court. Roger Federer's one changed. Might have been the same year. He used to play with Wii Motion Plus, and I'd beat Roger Federer. And then sometimes I'd beat Roger Federer with Roger Federer. But yeah, it was that's interesting, actually, because I remember he evolved his game. Like, that was one of the things about Federer all the time and why people love him so much. Like Andy Roddick was the king of aces, and then when Roger Federer played him in the final, he aced him like 86 times. He was the kind of guy that was like, oh, this is how you play? I can also play that way if I want. So he was able to evolve his game a lot. But as we've discussed so many times, there's a massive difference between him and Djokovic. Djokovic is just the all-round best. And Rafael.
Well, this is the thing. He's sort of, to me, essentially what Nadal's saying there. He might not have said it in those words, but he's basically saying that with Federer, you could tell that his backhand was weaker than his forehand, but with Djokovic, there was no weakness like that. And you basically just got to try and wear him down over a long time. And, well, it's a very small difference. We're talking about the three best players of all time here. But obviously something's got to give Djokovic the edge over the other two. I mean, statistically, he's better than the other two.
He's just all-round better.
Yeah,
that's the thing. So Roger Federer could play a specific type of game really, really well. And if he wanted to, he could change to play that specific type of game really, really well. I kind of feel like it's like he could put all of his points in service for this game, but it would detract from his backhand. Whereas Novak Djokovic always has 10 out of 10 in every position.
And the thing that really stuck out to me, if there was a match that I think about when I think about, or one match, and we talk about the big three rivalry, one match that really sticks out to me was that 2019 Wimbledon final where Djokovic won that epic. Is that Federer, and I know Federer was a fair age at that time, but Federer played the absolute best tennis he could play. Djokovic didn't. He just did enough to hang in there, win the big points. Djokovic won the title, Federer didn't. Then that really stuck with me. I thought, one guy's played his absolute best against another guy who's not playing his best, but yet Djokovic has still come out the winner here.
Is that the one where Roger Federer got really angry with the...
That was where Federer was up 8-7 and 40-15. He had 40-15 serving for it, and he somehow lost it from that point. And nobody can believe that Federer could be up 40-15 and 8-7 and not win from that position. Only Djokovic, it's stating the obvious, only Djokovic could come back and beat Federer from that position. Yeah. Nobody else in the history of the game comes back and beats Federer from that position.
But that was the one where he got really angry with the slow service from Djokovic as well, right?
Yeah, I think Djokovic
early in the match.
I think Djokovic really got under Federer's skin.
I think that was the real main key to victory. At that stage, I remember watching that, and it was early in the match where Djokovic was doing a lot of fuffing around between services and Federer actually got really angry, which I'd never seen before. Like the unflappable Federer, I didn't even know he had anger in him at that stage. Yeah. And I was like, I thought then, like, I think Djokovic might get this one.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Andy Roddick is a really good podcaster. Yeah. He's worth listening to. He's very insightful. And yeah, his podcasts, I know you're not that into tennis, but his podcasts are certainly worth watching if you're looking for one to watch.
As long as Nick Kyrgios doesn't appear on it, I'm keen.
Oh, it's all right. He gives Nick Kyrgios a spray often, so that adds to the appeal.
And that's it for the week. Let's see what happens this weekend when the Bulldogs become an undefeated 3-0. Storm probably... Got to do my tips on Thursday, and that Storm versus Panthers game is really killing me.
So you still think the Bulldogs win easily, even without Burton and Kikau?
Against the Eels, for sure. 100%.
So it doesn't seem... Like, it's hard for me. I'm biased because I'm a fan.
I'm finding all the Bulldogs fans...
An impartial, you think they're still going to win?
Yeah, although I'm finding the Bulldogs fans this year are a little bit like, not confident every week. And it's weird because last year they were all so confident of a top 4 finish after like the 4th week.
It's probably just the years of pain, the years of...
Turned into Dragons fan boys. You did well last year, come on.
But yeah, look, I mean, they've done what they had to do so far.
See, even like this week is so hard to tip. Storm and Panthers really hard. Warriors, Roosters, how do you know what's going to happen? I'd say the Broncos are definitely going to win. I'd say the Sharks are definitely going to beat the Rabbitohs. Dolphins and Tigers... Don't know. Like, based on last week's performance, surely the Tigers are going to get it, but do you really know? Titans and Knights, probably the Knights, but can you trust the Knights? Eels, Bulldogs, definitely Bulldogs. And then Sea Eagles, Raiders. Are we going to get the same crap that Sea Eagles dished up last week?
You just don't know which Manly side's going to turn. That game just solely hinges on which Manly team's going to turn up.
Yeah,
and of course, whether Tom Trbojevic plays or not. Again, he's 50-50 chance of playing. If he plays, you probably lean towards Manly. If he doesn't play, you probably lean towards Canberra.
So it's an interesting round. Anyway, that's it for the week. Don't forget to go to OptimumCBD.store for all your CBD needs. You must be over 18 to order. Orders over $99. Get free delivery. And make sure you sign up to SmartB. It's not too late to join the tipping. You can still win $100 every week to the best tipster. We have had a delay in announcing them because there's 2 guys with the same name and we can't identify which one actually won the tipping. The developers actually have to do something about and the AFL has had issues because of the initial round, which we're still trying to resolve.
That weird opening round thing. Yeah.
Well, they removed 2 games and stuff like that, and everyone had already entered their tips. So we have to go look through basically crawl through the database bit by bit and have a look at what to do. So it is getting resolved, and it will be resolved by round 3 or 2 or whatever bloody round we're up to. And don't forget to play Smart Play. AFL is now live. We do need to adjust the salaries a little bit, but super fun to play Smart Play. Game-based daily fantasy sports. A lot of people are getting into it and winning smart coins. And that's it for the week, and we'll see you next week, Dan, and Producer Shares.
Thanks, Sean. Catch you next week, mate.
Alrighty then.